From the Weather NorCal Command Center, this is your morning update.
Dennis's Heating and Air Conditioning is Northern California's premier heating and air conditioning contractor. From residential housing, large commercial projects, installation to repair, sheet metal fabrication, and everything in between, we are your go-to heating and air conditioning specialist.
Well, happy Tuesday morning to you. We take a look at the latest activity here early this morning here, and you can see overnight the Six Rivers complex, as expected, is the fire where we're seeing the most activity. What this is telling us is that the satellite is detecting the heat signature. And when we start, you kind of see a little bit of a gauge down here. So we're kind of in the very warm category. You start getting into the hot to very hot when you get into the yellows and whites. If you look real closely, not really seeing it, but it's just right here. This is where we see most of the activity. Now you think about too, where most of the rain was. It was to the east of the Six Rivers complex. Unfortunately, it did not get any rainfall out of the system that we saw from Hillary yesterday. But many other fires were able to kind of get some of that rain, and that certainly was a big help. All right, let's get you to the weather computer here. And now this is just basically the satellite detecting heat signatures. So once again, as expected, you can see this. Now, think about this. This is where we're seeing most of the heat signatures, right, since last night. And you go to the east, and we're not seeing any of those. And the reason being is, that doesn't mean the fires that aren't being detected by the satellite aren't active, because they certainly are. But we were able to get a break with all of the rain that we saw. So that is really great to see less of these red dots. I'd be willing to guess that in the next day or two, we may start seeing more dots popping up here to the east of this line as we, of course, see less and less of that rain. Of course, yesterday was the day of rain. Today is not the day of rain, unfortunately. You know, a lot of people asking, oh, we're going to see more rain the next day? No. I mean, we're going to see a few pop-up showers here and there. We'll get into that a little bit later. But let's kind of still focus on the fires here. So here you can see all of the fire perimeters and the activity associated with that. And I'm going to get into what these colors mean, and we'll kind of talk about that right here. If you see red, that means it's basically about 0 to 12 hours old, the most recent activity that the satellite data has picked up. You get into the oranges and yellows, that's getting into a day or two old, and then these gray colors indicating it's you know, about a week old, basically. So let's take you fire by fire, community by community, and give you a basic idea of what we're looking at. Now, number one, again, you can see these colors. Now, you can see the fire perimeter kind of in red right here, right? That's the head fire. On the outer fringe of that fire perimeter is where we're seeing the most activity, the most recent activity. So this is where we've seen that. Now, this is the latest fire perimeter, and you can see here that we look at Klamath River, we take a look at Horse Creek along with the Den fire, which is right here, the satellite not picking up on any activity there. And then, of course, we head out to Syed Valley. So these are all the different distances that these communities are from the official fire perimeter. And that's what I'm using, because that is an official fire perimeter. What you're seeing here is basically activity detected by the satellite, and it's not necessarily official, but it's a pretty good representation of at least where the activity is associated with the fire. All right, so now we take it to the south here, and there you can see Etna. Now we've got the Scott fire to look at here, which is actually closer than the head fire to Etna, Fort Jones, and then taking a look at Wairika as well. Now we take you off to the west, where we've got the Ufish fire and the Malone fire. Now the Ufish fire has seen certainly a lot of activity in the last really 0 to 12 hours, but not so much activity for the Malone fire. But there you can see the respective distances there to Happy Camp. And they're about the same distance, about 6.5 miles from Happy Camp. Now the Deep fire in Trinity County, where we've seen most of the activity really over the last few days being detected on the south side of the fire. You're seeing a few yellow dots here, so it looks like some less activity. Maybe they're kind of making some ground on some of that part of the fire perimeter here. But the fire perimeter is about 2.7 miles from the Trinity Alps Resort, and then of course Covington Mill, Trinity Center, and Coffee Creek. Now we take it to the south, and there's Highway 299, of course, still over 10 miles from these respective communities. Now we take you to the Smith River Complex. Now, there are a lot of fires within this complex. So what I've done is I've tried to analyze which fire is closest to these so I can give you an accurate representation here. All right, so we take a look at the far west fire here. They all have different names, and quite honestly, I can't remember all the names, but 6.3 from Smith River here is the one that's the farthest west in the complex here, as well as 15.5 to Crescent City and Hiuchi. Let's take you to the east here, get a better perspective with the main, bigger kind of cluster of fires here. This is actually a new perimeter, it looks like, because we're not seeing any fire activity being detected by the satellite, as well as this part here as well. So this may be some of the growth that we've seen. Now that brings it 3.3 miles from Gas Key, and of course 2.6 miles on the southern edge here to Gas Key, and then this one about 7.5 miles from Hiuchi. So kind of interesting there. We take you out to the Perch fire, and just, you know, a lot of activity. Still looks like a fairly active fire here, still showing some recent activity here. That is about 2.3 miles from the community of Orleans. Now the Lone Fire, I like seeing this. We're not seeing really any red on the map, indicating not much in the way of recent activity. Unfortunately, I don't think there was much rain on top of this. I didn't see any, at least decent measurable rainfall in Hoopa or Willow Creek, maybe about 100th or two, but that's about it. But you can see that certainly the higher humidity levels certainly did help. I want to take you a little bit closer to, of course, you got the Trinity River right here, right? And here's the Lone Pine Fire, and there's the fire perimeter, and here, of course, is, you know, activity that's a few days old. Here's the actual center of town, but we do actually have the community here as well. So, I mean, we're not too far, maybe about a half a mile from the very western fringe of this to the southern portion of Hoopa, right? So, I mean, this fire is obviously uncomfortably close. The firefighters are doing everything they can to protect the community of Hoopa. So as of right now, I haven't seen much growth. You know, we got to watch this right here to see if it, and then of course another thing we got to watch to see if it hops over the Trinity River. And as of right now, not seeing that. You got a couple of spots here that are still on the north side of the river. So firefighters still doing a great job with that, and hopefully that does not spread southward. Let's take you to the Pilot Fire. There's Hyam Palm, there's a look at Mad River, and there's a look at Dinsmore. And of course you can see all of these. Now there's the most recent activity, and of course on the outer fringe here actually is where we're seeing some older activity. Sulphur Fire, not too far from there. There you can see it's about, well, there's Hyam Palm right here. I meant to kind of cover that up, but 8.3 miles from Hyam Palm. We take you out to the west. Have to kind of back out here before I hit my wall here. But there's Dinsmore, there's Mad River, and then Hayfork. Still pretty far from Hayfork, almost 15 miles as a matter of fact. And it doesn't really look like that fire has grown much. Here you can see the Lost Fire. Most of the activity has been on the east side of the fire, 4.8 miles from Johnson's, and then kind of to the west here, not as much activity, and haven't really seen any growth here either. But there's Berry Glen, and there is a look at Orick. All right, way to the south here, we've got another fire called the Slide Fire. A lot of yellow in there, indicating fairly old activity, not any recent activity. And the closest community there is looking at Covello, and that is 27 miles away. Okay, so let's switch gears. We're not going to talk about the fires anymore, but what we're going to talk about is the rain that we saw yesterday. Now you'll notice, and this is something I was watching yesterday as the rain was kind of hitting Northern California. It seemed like there was this line right around central Siskiyou County throughout most of the day where we saw this line. And in fact, Futurecast picked up on it pretty well. There was a nice line of rain right in this area right here where we saw the bulk of the rain, the heaviest amount of rainfall. Now, there was eventually, as we got into the evening hours, some thunderstorm activity here in western Siskiyou County. It created flood warnings. Of course, as you know, there was a mudslide, debris flows, and evacuation warnings because of that mudslide. That was kind of up as you start getting onto the mountain on Everett Memorial Highway. As a matter of fact, there were some evacuation warnings there, and they closed the highway. It was just a mess up there with that mudslide and debris flow up there. So there was certainly a lot of rainfall up into Siskiyou County that did create some of those flooding concerns and issues. Of course, things have quieted down here this morning, and I don't anticipate any more of that type of activity. But here you can see some of the numbers. Now, when you're looking at these numbers, I want you to remember, you may have seen more in your backyard than the Redding Airport did. You may have seen less. It just depends on where you are. So these, you have to look at these numbers and say, that's not what I got. I got a lot more than that. Yeah, of course you probably did. But if I had to show every single backyard how much rain, it would take me 2 hours, right, to go through all of that. So you just have to look at these numbers and go, hey, here's a general idea of what Northern California saw in rain. And I like this visual here. This is exactly what we saw. Most of the rain was here. And by the way, what I haven't mentioned yet is this. Out at the Redding Airport, the Redding Airport saw a little over 1/4 inch of rainfall. That actually breaks a record for Monday of 0.20 in 1968. Kind of interesting there. But there you can see as you head to the east, not as much rainfall. Head to the west, that is, not as much rainfall either. But it was great. Look at Pollard Flat, 2.45. There were some areas in the mountains that saw 1 to even over 2 inches of rain. What a welcome sight indeed. And it looks like the amount of rainfall that we're going to see today is pretty much non-existent compared to what we saw yesterday. All right, so here's the deal. Leftover showers possibly, maybe a few thunderstorms today. I'm not anticipating it to be a big deal. There's going to be a lot less activity this week than we saw last week. And I mean, just, it warms my heart to be able to say, no more lightning strikes. Of course, today there still may be a chance. But as we go into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm loving this. No more thunderstorms to talk about. And I'm also loving the cooler temperatures, as I'm sure you are too, many of you. Of course, I can't speak for you, right? All right, so here's your valley forecast. Temperature's still not that bad today. I mean, it's going to warm up over yesterday, but we're going to be looking at mid to upper 80s for your daytime highs. And we take you into the mountains. I've got the clouds in there. Keep in mind, there could be a stray shower, there could be a stray thunderstorm. And we're going to take a look at Futurecast here in a second, and I'll show what I'm talking about. But first, let's take a look at the satellite image. The area of low pressure that was here yesterday and tapping into that moisture, giving us the rain, has shifted to the south and kind of coming a little bit more to the east. So as it moves to the east, what's going to happen is our chances for rain diminish. Okay, so that's exactly what it's doing, but we're still on the north side of that upper level flow, and that's going to keep bringing in a little bit of moisture. We have leftover moisture from Hillary still over us, and that is, of course, giving us the cloud cover we're seeing this morning, but it will also be responsible for the potential for some afternoon showers and maybe a few isolated thunderstorms. This is not going to be widespread. Many of us are going to get through the day in the mountains without even seeing a drop of rain, without even seeing any thunderstorms, but some of us are going to see a pop-up shower or thunderstorm. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to have one right over Wairika or one just to the west of Weaverville. It just means that the potential's out there. So everyone in the mountains has that chance today. It's just not going to be very widespread. Then we go into tonight, it's all pretty much done, and this is what I'm loving, right? We go into Wednesday, just the clouds developing, but no rain is in the forecast. Let's take into the long range. Now, it looks like as we go into Thursday night, there may be a weak disturbance that'll pass through. I think it'll be mainly in the form of showers and no thunderstorms. We'll see. I'll keep a close eye on it, but as of right now, it doesn't look very promising for a lot of lightning. And then we go into Saturday, Sunday, into early next week, no more rain. We're getting a break from all of that. We're getting a break from this day after day of lightning strikes. All right, so here's what we have in store for us today. Temperatures mid to upper 80s in the valley. We're talking 70s in the higher elevations. So temperature-wise, yes, it's warming up, but still gorgeous. I don't think many people can complain. You know, I say, take a day off of work yesterday. Today might even be a better day because it won't be raining. You can get out there and enjoy the cooler temperatures. So I don't know, maybe you're feeling a little sick. I don't know. Who knows? Nice day to take off work. I'd love to, but I got to report the weather to you, but I don't mind. I love it. This is great. All right, take a look at this. Here's your 7-day outlook for Mount Shasta. Now, we've got this slight chance for everyone in the mountains. It dries out for Wednesday. There's that slight chance I was talking about for Thursday night. We'll have to watch that. It still looks pretty consistent in the model data. And then we go into Friday through the weekend into next week, staying fairly mild, only in the low 80s for most of us in the higher elevations. And for the valley, look at that, no rain, no thunderstorms, no lightning, nothing, right? We're just looking at mild temperatures, at least for this time of the year. It's warming up a bit on Thursday. We're in the mid to upper 90s at that point, but then we're back down to the low 90s. So looks like we are going to see temperatures kind of below normal for this time of the year. 92 Friday, basically between 92 and 93 for everyone in the valley, starting Friday through the weekend into early next week.